Smoked clam chowder is one of those ideas that looks good on paper, but it's usually disappointing at best when people try to execute it. The reason is that smoked clams and potatoes really don't work well together. In this soup, celery root plays the role of potatoes, and most people will think that it is potato, but it doesn't have that gummy texture of a potato, which is usually the problem with any smoked seafood chowder. There are a couple of other interesting things about this recipe too, as you'll see.
Yeah, celery root now, I've cut this in half. Some of this has been used before. It's important when you're using celery root, especially for something like this, you want to really, not just peel it, but you want to take that whole outer edge off, because this will be very bitter, and we don't want bitterness in the soup. So, celery root's not expensive, so don't feel bad about cutting, centimeter off of the edge. It's okay. After you've cut the edges off, you're going to square them up. Square up the slices that you've made. And the irregular edges, these are going to get cooked and these are going to get blended into the soup. These I'm going to continue to cut into nice even size, beautiful looking squares. So it'll all be in the soup, but in two different forms, as you'll see. I've got a pot here with about 800 milliliters of water, something like that. Doesn't have to be exact. Salted, nicely salted, and adding the irregular pieces to this first. And we're going to let this really cook. We're going to cook these pieces until they're quite soft. After about 30 minutes, these pieces are very soft. I'm going to drain them and transferring them over directly to the cup of the stick blender, where they're going to be pureed later. There's no point in dirtying another container, just going to be used in there anyway. Now the water is still hot. Now I've got the nicely cut cubes of celeriac, celery root. Pull these pieces out. Now remember, they're hot and they're still going to continue cooking from the residual heat some. Now, dump the water out of here and into that same pan that's still hot. We're going to put the butter. Begin making the roux. It heats down at medium. In fact, I'm going to go just a little bit less than that. I'm going to go down to 4. We don't want a dark roux for this, but we want it to be just beyond blonde. The color of the roux also tells you what taste it is, and this is part of the taste of the soup, as roux often are part of the taste of the dish, as long as they're cooked beyond white. And don't try to rush it and turn up the heat high. You'll just ruin it. You'll have to watch my other video called the 12 Shades of Roux in order to be able to understand why. Just past that blonde stage, so I'm going to add the milk and whisk this in. Despite the common misconception, milk does not need to be warmed or boiled before you use it for a roux. All that does is make it go a little bit faster. It's just fine. This is going to be cooked for a while anyway. Getting a separate pot and heating the milk is just a waste of time. Okay, once this is incorporated, now we can use this in the cup with the stick blender and the other ingredients. In the stick blender cup, I've got the large pieces of celeriac that was boiled until it was soft earlier. To this I'm going to add the shallot and some of this bechamel. It's not fully formed bechamel yet because it hasn't been cooked, but that's okay. It'll finish cooking after this has been blended. Then puree, and now it's pureed. It goes back into the saucepan with the rest of that bechamel that we didn't use in the stick blender cup. Now I'm going to add the bay leaf, and I'm going to add the cubes of celeriac that are cut nicely, and I have a tin here of smoked clams. I'm going to add all of them, including the juices from the can. White pepper to this, maybe just a little bit more, and I have some Ajwan, which I'm grinding in a mortar right now, just by itself. There's the Ajwan. You can add thyme to this if you don't have this seasoning. It won't be quite as refined, but it will work. This is better though. This is really adds a very interesting dimension to the flavor. Okay, I just checked the salt level. Needed a little bit more salt. Pull that bay leaf out of there. And then the final adjustment to the flavoring is a little fresh lemon juice. It's like a tablespoon or so. Don't overdo it. And now it's ready to plate up.
If you like my videos, look for my cookbook, now available through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other internet bookseller sites. Also look for my cocktail book, Cocktails of the South Pacific and Beyond, Advanced Mixology, available through Amazon online.